Well, it's pretty simple. Your body doesn't have enough nutrients to rebuild its tissues. In this case, it's the gums. About 100 years ago, Dr. Weston A. Price, he's a dentist, he proved that this is nutritional in his book called Nutrition and Physical Degeneration. It's a classic. I highly recommend it. And I consider that book mandatory reading because it's long before Dr. Wallach, it's long before the age of supplements, and it proved very directly that contact with primitive people, contact with the white powders, sugar and flour, destroyed their health. And he also proved by showing the regeneration of mouth and gums and teeth, he proved that it's nutritional deficiency. It's a two-sided coin. One side, the people were being destroyed, their health was being destroyed by the powders. The other one, they weren't getting enough nutrients. So in his day, he was feeding people what might be the equivalent of like a keto, leaning, paleo diet. You know, he was using just bone soup and natural butter and stuff like this that's high in the good fats. Now, he was also operating in a world that had much less of a problem with nutrient deficiency in the soils and stuff like that. You know, there was still more nutrients in the soil, more minerals in the soil. So now we're 100 years later and that problem is through the roof. But long story short, it's a deficiency in two major nutrient groups. The first one is what we call the good fats. That includes the fat-soluble vitamins D, E, A, and K, the fat-soluble minerals, particularly selenium and zinc, as well as cholesterol, key cholesterol. And the omegas are in that group as well. I missed those. So the omegas, cholesterol, which cholesterol doesn't make it on our list of 90 essential nutrients because to make it on that list, officially, you can't produce any of it yourself. And you can produce some cholesterol yourself, but we need to get the rest from diet. And the other major group is the calcium, magnesium, etc. There's a bunch of trace minerals in that group as well. These are what we call the bone and joint minerals. Included as well is sulfur. So whenever you hear about bone soup or anything like that, that's a sulfur-based thing. Now that group, the bone and joint group, this is highly, highly deficient from our world, basically from our entire food supply and from our lifestyle, because those longest lived people, they have multiple sources of lots and lots of calcium and cofactors. And some groundwater and spring water is particularly high in sulfur as well. You'll notice the eggy taste. Maybe you've gone camping or something out in the wilderness and you've noticed this water kind of smells and tastes like eggs. Well, that's the sulfur in it. But the other parts of it are irrigating their fields with mineral-rich water. Basically, wherever they live in the world, they have a source of mineral-rich water, or they live on volcanic soil, and that soil is already mineral-rich, so that is fortifying their crops. A lot of people hear us talking about the wood ashes. That's not the whole story. That is part of it. That is part of how they fortify their foods and cut their salt and add it into their meals, you know, as a stretcher for flour. That is part of it. Yes, they use wood or sea moss as their primary fuel for their cooking and heating fires, and what's left over is the plant-derived minerals in the form of ash. The white ash they will cut their salt with, they will add it to their food, and then the rest of it will go out into the garden or into the fields. We don't mention compost heaps enough. A lot of these natural long-lived populations have compost piles that are bigger than the house, believe it or not. So there's all kinds of food scraps, including the wood ashes, that'll be thrown into the compost heap, including the bones as well. And that bone thing is the last major piece that we're completely missing from our food supply. And we do recommend bone soup, but that's only one way to consume it, and that doesn't, you're not consuming all of it. You can leach a lot of the nutrients out into the soup, and that is fantastic. But those longest lived people, not only do they eat the entire animal, they eat the muscle, they eat the organs, they make soups out of the bones, and when the soup is done, they grind that up into bone meal, and they also add that into their foods. This is completing the cycle. And when you know the full story of how the longest lived populations actually got their nutrients, you know you can't replicate that. This is why we sell supplements, because we're not recommending that you go out and grow your own food with irrigated mineral-rich water and all this stuff. On top of that, we do terrible things like eat processed flour and processed sugar, and these either attack our digestive system itself, causing damage, preventing nutrient absorption, or they exacerbate nutrient deficiencies. And again, a lot of people ask, well, can I just burn wood? No, that's not the whole part of the picture. And you probably don't live in a place where all the minerals are in the soil anyways, so you can burn wood, but it's not going to give you all the minerals that you need. And so the flour is the main culprit of damaging the digestive system, and the sugar is the main culprit of exacerbating the nutrient deficiencies. Why? Because the more sugar that you have, the more nutrients that you need to process that sugar. It's not easy to process. The body doesn't really like it. The body takes a real food and turns it into sugar to feed the cells. So this whole explanation, I hope that helps, because it's not a topical problem. It's not like the sugar is physically eating away the enamel or anything like that. I've heard people say that. I've heard people say that about colas as well, but there's more to the picture. In the case of colas, we're getting technical now into the chemistry, but the colas specifically are probably the worst possible thing that you can consume because they are so high in phosphorus. And when you consume too much phosphorus, it makes you need a lot more calcium, thus exacerbating the deficiency. This is part of why alfalfa is used as one of the primary basis of animal feeds, because that phosphorus to calcium ratio is actually the opposite in alfalfa. There's a lot more calcium than there is phosphorus. This is good for them. And I hope it doesn't sound too complicated, but this is our basic advice anyways. If you message us, you're going to get the food recommendations. We're going to be recommending that you eat more fat and protein than carbs and sugar, particularly processed carbs and sugar. And we're also going to recommend basic supplementation with the 90 essential nutrients. None of those things on the list are like extra, except for perhaps the joint support. Those are sulfur-based compounds, MSM, glucosamine sulfate, chondroitin sulfate. These are extra on top of the 90 essential nutrients. It has absolutely nothing to do with genetics. None of these problems have anything at all to do with genetics. The only thing that genetics, have in common is that food habits tend to run in families, and you have the same nutrient availability in your food supply that your parents did. Generally, we do not recommend taking any advice from the media. In fact, media is poison, in my opinion. It's mind poison, and mind is part of the body. It's part of health. They go hand in hand. You want to stay away from this demon. But no, this is a connective tissue problem. We went long earlier on the gum problem. Same sort of thing, except you want to go heavier on the connective tissue. And again, we're not eating the whole animal. We're not grinding up the bones and all that stuff. You do want to add a supplement into it. Do not take just glucosamine or something like that. If you go and look at Amazon reviews of just connective tissue products, you'll get very variable reviews. Some people will say, this helped me so much with my wrinkles. And some people say, I took this for 6 months and it did nothing. This is because those sulfur compounds are only one of the 90 essential nutrients. It requires the whole cake recipe for your body to actually repair the connective tissue. Whether or not you are consuming connective tissue, you still need all those other nutrients, including the vitamins and all the minerals. Now, pharmacist Ben Fuchs likes to call vitamin C for connective tissue. Now again, don't go out and buy vitamin C. There's ample amounts in our regular products. You want to get yourself on a basic product and add connective tissue. Now, one of those things that I would add also is bone soup. Everybody should be consuming bone soup in some way, some form. You should be cooking with it. If you're not cooking with it, you should be making it and just drinking it. If you have a connective tissue problem, I would be drinking that all day, every day, basically. And making bone soup yourself is by far superior to buying it. It's also a heck of a lot cheaper. It is not more convenient because you need to boil them for a while. We have all the different bone soup recipes in our cookbook, by the way. Generally, I believe beef is superior. Chicken takes less long, so does fish bones. Vegetables, also it doesn't take as long to make vegetable stock, but it's not going to give you the connective tissue benefit. But a lot of people don't know that you can go to your local grocery store and go to the butcher counter and ask them for soup bones, and they will probably, good chance, they'll give you the bag for free. If not, they'll slap a little sticker on it. It might cost you $2, might cost you $5, but it's a very cost-efficient way to do it. In our camp, we do not promote veganism. There is not a single longest-lived population that is vegan. They are all omnivores. We definitely recommend meat, but we don't recommend eating only the muscle. You got to make up for the rest of it. Eat the organs if you have the opportunity, and definitely get those bone minerals into you. If you only eat muscle meat, and I love red meat. Love red meat. It's my favorite. I'm O negative blood. I do believe blood has something to do with this, but if we only eat red meat, or eat a lot of it, we greatly exacerbate our calcium deficiency. This is why, there's people out there saying that eating meat contributes to osteoporosis and stuff. Well, it does if you do not consume those bone minerals. And we're not eating bones anymore, and we're not irrigating our fields, all that stuff. That's why there's a problem. You will also notice a lot of people connecting meat eating to cancer. Well, the statistics are a bit dubious, but a couple of meats are on our bad list for this reason, because they provide too much toxic compounds, basically free radical type compounds that mess up our system. When I say mess up our system, I mean demand too many antioxidants to try and mitigate that damage. Those antioxidants are also linked to pro-cancer, right? We're talking about selenium here specifically, the master antioxidant. You don't have enough selenium, you're going to get cancer. So that's why processed meat is on our list, and that's why burned animal fats of any kind are on our bad list, and that's why well-done red meat is also on our bad list, because when you cook it all the way through at high temperature, it creates too much acrylamide and heterocyclic amines and all this stuff. So it's not that complicated. Just don't burn your meat. If you're eating red meat, medium rare is your limit, unless you are stewing it or something, boiling it where you're not using high temperature. That is fine. You're still going to be making much less of those problematic compounds. Now, this is not so much a 90 essential nutrient thing as it is a liver flush thing. But since there is a slight danger if you do have big gallstones, if you do the flush, they could get stuck. That can be a medical emergency. So we do recommend, if you know you have an existing problem with gallstones, go and get high-frequency ultrasound. You break them up with high-frequency ultrasound. This goes for the kidneys too. You can help break them up, and then you do a liver flush. DM us for more details about that. And we do not recommend doing the liver flush without fortifying your body first. We recommend being on the 90 essential nutrients first. And honestly, you should probably do extra selenium as well, because extra selenium is key for liver health, and the liver's above the gallbladder. That's what's controlling a lot of this. The stones themselves were formed by nutrient deficiencies, the exact same group that we started this with, the good fats and the calcium group. So you want to make sure that you're getting those nutrients from now on, so you do not have a stone problem anywhere in the body, whether it's a heel spur or a kidney stone, anything like that. And definitely check out my book, Fake Diseases. It covers all of the major topics that come up, like birth defects, blood sugar problems, bone and joint problems, cancer, autoimmune problems, and more. And it's on Amazon for just $9.99. And of course, make sure to check out our food page, Notice Foods, that's on YouTube, and at Notice Foods on Instagram. We have a lot of content up there teaching you how to cook without the bad foods that Dr. Wallach describes, and Dr. Glidden's 12 bad foods, all of that, all of the rules that you need to know. And we have experienced chefs and bakers who will answer the questions in those inboxes. Definitely get yourself a copy of Dr. Wallach's cookbook. This is basically a textbook teaching you everything you know about how to cook without the bad foods, particularly oil and gluten, and all of the other problematic things on the list. This is 300 pages stuffed full of recipes, every traditional recipe that you could think of, and modern dishes without the bad foods that they're usually made from. And I've also published a book in response to some of Dr. Wallach's criticisms, including the major articles that have been written against him on the internet. So if you are a Dr. Wallach fan or a longevity distributor, I definitely recommend having this book in your toolkit. I'm very excited to announce my newest book, Everything the Government Does is Bad for Us. And you can get the paperback on Amazon for just $9.99. And you can find the video read-along version or the audiobook on my website, noticebooks.org. And all of my books, audiobooks, and links are available on my website, noticebooks.org. And if you'd like to talk to us directly, you can call us. Actually, you can call Judy. She's downriver Detroit. You can call from anywhere in the US, Canada, Mexico, UK, Australia, New Zealand, any other country. You want to email us or send us a DM on whatever app that you want to contact us on. Instagram is super convenient for us. And that's for any sales or product information in those countries or any distributor information. And make sure to check out my channel for many other videos on a whole array of subjects, and my other channels are all in the description of this video. And if you want to see what is apparently my most controversial video that was banned from YouTube and BitChute, you can go to wagthedogtheory.com and view the whole uncensored version of the video. And I recommend downloading it if it is still there.